วิทยากรนะคะคือท่านปัชชิมาธนสันติอดีตอธิบดีกรมทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาและท่านผู้พิพากษาสมทบในศาลทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาและการค้าระหว่างประเทศกลางและในโอกาสนี้นะคะดิฉันขอแนะนำท่านวิทยากรอีกท่านหนึ่งนะคะมิสเตอร์สเตฟานPasseri นะคะ Good afternoon and welcome back to the today last section. We are pleased to have Mr. Stephane Passeri here with us this afternoon. Mr. Stephane Passeri, a national of France and is renowned international expert on geographical indication development of food, agriculture, and handicraft products. Currently appointed as international consultant and team leader at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization's regional office for Asia and the Pacific, stationed in Bangkok, Thailand. He has contributed to the development of geographical indication national system, including through the development of producer organization, value chains development, and capacity building in quality control and promotion for numerous products across Asia during the past 20 years. In 2017, Mr. Passeri was awarded by the French government to the title of Knight of Order of the Agriculture Merit for his long-term achievement on agriculture promotion. Mr. Passeri holds a master's degree in economics from the University of Nice-Sophia Antipolis in France and postgraduate degree in finance and management. Please welcome Mr. Stephane Passeri.
วันนี้ต้องขอเริ่มในหัวข้อนะคะในเรื่องของที่มิสเตอร์สเตฟานจะพูดถึงก็คือในเรื่องของสิ่งบ่งชี้ทางภูมิศาสตร์ซึ่งมิสเตอร์สเตฟานเองเนี่ยนะคะเป็นผู้ที่เชี่ยวชาญในเรื่องของสิ่งบ่งชี้ทางภูมิศาสตร์และเป็นผู้ที่ได้แนะนำตั้งแต่มีการร่างกฎหมายสิ่งบ่งชี้ทางภูมิศาสตร์ในประเทศไทยรวมทั้งให้คำแนะนำในเรื่องของการบริหารจัดการสิ่งบ่งชี้ทางภูมิศาสตร์ดิฉันเชื่อว่าคุณสเตฟานเนี่ยฟังภาษาไทยรู้เรื่องนะคะเพราะฉะนั้นวันนี้เองเนี่ยก็จะเป็นการบรรยายที่ท่านทั้งหลายที่ผู้รับฟังเนี่ยนะคะสามารถจะถามคำถามเข้ามาได้นะคะแล้วก็ดิฉันจะคงจะมีการสรุปเป็นช่วงๆได้ตกลงกับคุณสเตฟานไว้แล้วก็คือสเตฟานได้จะพูดไปทั้งหมด5 ท็อปิกด้วยกันนะคะแล้วเดี๋ยวก็เราจะได้คุยกันว่าในเรื่องของ GI เนี่ยหรือสิ่งบ่งชี้ทางภูมิศาสตร์นี่เองเนี่ย GI เองเนี่ยเป็นหนึ่งเรื่องนะคะที่เป็นกฎหมายทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาเรียกว่าเป็นน้องเล็กสุดละกันนะคะแต่ทุกคนเนี่ยเริ่มให้ความสำคัญเพราะว่า GI นี้เองมีมูลค่าทางเศรษฐกิจนะคะขอเชิญท่านรับฟังคำบรรยายของมิสเตอร์สเตฟานStephane, you have a floor, please.
Thank you very much, Kun Pachima. Thank you very much for the IPIT bar session. I'm very happy to be with you today to discuss about geographical indication. So it's a topic that has been very important for Thailand in the last 20 years. And as Kun Pachima told you, I have been in Thailand already for more than 20 years. So I am not fluent in Thai, but I can understand a little bit. What I will do, I will try to share my screen. So please let me know if you can see my presentation. I will open it now. So can you see it clearly?
Yes, we clearly hear your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So the topic of today will be to present on geographical indication as an instrument for the development of origin-linked products and their valorization. So what is important to keep in mind in my presentation, I will briefly introduce some of the key points of geographical indication, because some of you may be quite aware of what geographical indication are, but perhaps some of you are not familiar with the topic. So before we go to a second part of my presentation, when I will present what are the current development of geographical indication in Europe, but you will see also most importantly in Asia, which is in the leadership now of GI development, and what are the key aspects in terms of GI registration and enforcement that you as a judge you may be confronted with in your day-to-day work. So first of all, also don't hesitate to stop me, or Kunpajima will certainly let me know if I am going too far, too fast, or some question erase. Don't hesitate to interrupt me because it's an interactive session. So I am very available to answer any question at any time. So starting with the definition of geographical indication. First of all, geographical indication is an intellectual property right. I think we all agree on that. But you will see in my presentation, it is also a little bit more than just a simple intellectual property right. So the WTO, TRIPS, introduced geographical indication to the world when it was drafted in 1996, because it was the first global trade treaty which introduced intellectual property in general, but also GI as an intellectual property rights together with other rights such as trademark, patent, copyright, design, etc. So it's also provide the first basis of definition of GIs as we know it today. So in its article 22.1, as you see on my slide, the definition given by WTO TRIPS agreement is geographical indication are indication which identify a good as originating in a territory of a member or a region or locality in that territory where a given quality, reputation, or other characteristic of the good is essentially attributable to its geographical origin. So it is recognized, this definition, as the base of many legislation today in WTO member countries as a first starting point of defining what geographical indication are in their national legislation. But what is very important when we talk about GI to identify early on is the particularity of GI as an intellectual property right compared to other IP rights, such as patent, trademark, for example. One of the particularity of GIs is it has to be protected first in the country of origin of the products before it could be protected in foreign country. Meaning, if you want your Thai GIs to be protected in France, Germany, Japan, anywhere in the world, you will need first to have it protected as a GI in Thailand, which is different from trademark and patent, for example, where you can protect it in foreign country before you protect it in your national country, because it's not needed. You can be a company and register your patent in an export market without registering it in Thailand. It's perfectly acceptable. But for GIs, it's not possible. So that's very important because it means the national legislation of GI protection is even more important for GI products as it is for other type of rights. Because if the registration is not properly done in the country of origin, then you will face difficulty to have your products recognized or protected as a GI in foreign country. What is also important to notice in this definition is there is no limitation on a type of products which could be protected as GI. So for example, traditionally in Europe, where the GI system was invented, products protected are mostly food and agriculture products only. But now we can see some development internationally, especially in Asia as well, where the scope of GI products to be protected is much larger than food and agriculture. Handicraft play a very important role nowadays in GI products protected, but also you can have consideration of industrial products or also natural products. For example, stones like marbles or precious stones, like for example, sapphire in Ceylon, in Sri Lanka. So it's important to see the scope of products is quite broad. But it is also important that in this treaty, WTO, it is not mention of GI protecting services. It is protect goods. So as we speak today, there is very few countries which have inserted services to be protected as a GI. Because in practice, it is very complicated, and we can discuss about it later if you want. Also, the TRIPS agreement set the standards of many different provisions which are listed here. I will not go into details, but you will have the material after my presentation. In Article 22, 23, and 24 of the TRIPS agreement, which are dedicated to GIs, it set up GIs as a particular right. It's also discussed about what could be protected as GI, also potential conflict between GIs and other intellectual property rights, such as trademark, plant variety, for example. And it's say that every country member of WTO will have to protect geographical indication by different legal means, and we will talk about that later. But it will not have to develop their own system, their own GIs if they want, but at least they will have to provide some way for foreign GIs to be protectable in their country. So if I go also to some usual mistake people are having when we talk about GI. Sometimes people mistake GI with indication of provenance. So they are not indication of provenance. So, for example, when you say Belgium chocolate, they are more than that. Same, for example, when you use fancy geographical name, like if you like Passeri, you can use the French croissant, Paris-Brest, which are location in France. Paris and Brest are two cities, but it is artificial name which are not associated to the origin of the products, but it's more a traditional name used for a type of products which could be produced anywhere in the world with any type of raw materials which are not attached automatically with the origin of the name. And also, during time, there is geographical name that may have been attached to the area of production of the products some time ago, but are not anymore. They become generic. I can give you here some example that produce you may know, like Camembert, for example. It is a type of cheese. It is no more attached to the city of Camembert in France, which was the first area of production, because this name associated to the products was not protected as geographical indication, and it become descriptive of a type of cheese made with cow milk with a specific shape that could be done and produced anywhere in the world with not specific characteristic, more like a shape of products. So it is not a GI. But in France, later on, the producer of TCT decided to register a GI with a different name attached to very specific characteristics. And the real GI products for Camembert like cheese in France, it's called Camembert of Normandy, which is a GI, and it's very specific. But the Camembert term alone, it's only descriptive of a type of cheese, not the origin. Same for hamburger. As everybody knows hamburger, but very few people will tell you that if they eat hamburger today, the product is coming from the city of Hamburg in Germany. No, it's not the case anymore. It may have been the case in the past, but it's not the case anymore. Same for eau de Cologne or Cologne water. It used to be a perfume made in a city of Cologne in Germany, but now it's more the descriptive of a soft perfume. It's nothing to do with the origin or where the product is done. So what I want to say here is all this link with a certain provenance and origin are not GI. If you talk about GI, you have to talk about the geographically linked products, but attached to very specific quality characteristic, which are linked to the area and are verified. And we will see how they are verified. So when we talk about GIs protected by intellectual property right, first we talk about the name. When we protect a GI as such, we protect the name. We don't protect the logo. We don't protect a design. We protect the name. The GI is a name. So this name, it's often used by customers attached to a products because they notice products as specific characteristic based on the area of production. And this characteristic could be linked to different factors. They could be linked to factors of the local area of production. Like, for example, are you using indigenous variety or species for animals for the raw material of these products? Is there an influence of the environment or climate on the final products? Example, if you use the same variety of coffee in the south or north of Thailand, you may have different products because the influence of climate, altitude, irrigation technique, etc., etc. So there is a clear influence on the final products with the production area. The second type of factors which can influence the products will be also producer know-how. Of course, most of the products doesn't grow like that. They need to have some specific knowledge applied to them by producers. And it could be a very different stage of the production process. You could, for example, start as soon as the selection technique of the seeds. Then it could be the maintenance of the soil, planting technique, harvesting technique, use of specific material for pesticide, fertilizer. Then you go to the whole process of production, which often involve a lot of specific technique that can be very specific to local wisdom and local heritage. So you see these different factors, whatever they are linked with the natural environment or the producer know-how, will make a product unique in a specific area. And because this product is unique, the producer will identify the product with the name of the place the products come from. For example, you will not say, if you know rice in Thailand, I want to buy Thai coffee. No, you will say maybe I want to buy Deutung coffee or Deutschland coffee, which are specific. You will not say I want to buy jasmine rice. You will talk about Tongkula Longhai Homali rice, for example. So that's few examples of attachment of a product with its geographical origin. So because we are not only protecting a name when we register a GI, we also protecting all this information attached to this name. We call them specification, GI specification. So if I want to make a comparison, the GI name will be your name, your patronymic name to identify yourself. But in a passport, you don't only travel because your name. You have to give a certain number of information which can identify yourself, the color of your eyes, your head, your personal information. GI specification will be a bit that and more. They will describe what is attached to this name to make these products registrable as a geographical indication. And also this information will be shared by two different stakeholders. It will not be one individual or one company. We will draft this specification. It will be a group of producers that will gather and agree on the definition of the products attached to this name. We will talk about it later. And it's very important that all this information that will be in a specification are not purely marketing information that you can say whatever you want, including lie to the buyer. No, everything that you will put in this specification will have to be verified first when you apply for GI registration, but secondly, to the whole process after. It will be controlled all the time to be sure that you, as a producer, as a processor, you are fully respecting the specification which has been granted registration together with the GI name. So if I list here the key elements that are presented in this GI specification, as you see in blue color, there is a lot of technical information attached to the name. Of course, the first information you have to provide when you register, it's the name of the GI. But after, associated with this name, as I mentioned, you will have, for example, to describe what products it's applied to. Are we talking, for example, of fresh fruit, spices, handicraft, etc.? And beside the type of products, what are the form of these products that you will cover. For example, if the GI will cover only fresh fruit or processed fruit, if you are dealing with the stones, will it cover only raw stones or carved stones, etc., etc. Then we'll be identifying what are the key characteristics of these products. What makes these products different from similar products? Why this rice is different than other rice? So you can register it as a GI. For example, does it have specific shape, specific color? Or in terms of organoleptic qualities, does it have a specific taste or specific aroma that differentiate it from other similar products? Same also for chemical content. Does it have specific chemical characteristic, for example, content in specific minerals or acidity, water content, etc., etc. All characteristics that will prove that this product is not a generic product, but it's a specific product. Then, of course, if you identify a product with a geographical name attached to this area of production, you will have, as an applicant, to identify which area we're talking about. So it could be the administrative area, but more importantly, it will be a real area of production. For example, in this area, if you say that the GI products to develop all these characteristics have to be cultivated in a specific altitude, like, for example, above 1,000 meters, then you will identify the area of production which fulfill this altitude together with other criteria such as soil content, location in a side of the hill, if you have influence of wind or water, any type of information attached to the cultivation area or processing area. And you will often associate a map, and I will show you an example later. Then come to the specific technique of production. We have to identify if there is specific method of production delivered by the producer or processor to deliver these products. That will have to be identified here as well to demonstrate a specific characteristic. You don't have to give all information. For example, as a producer, if you have some traditional secret from your family on doing something specific on a product, you may not have to mention that. Just mention enough information to demonstrate there is a know-how available that could differentiate these products from other more generic products. And all these steps, 2, 3, 4, and 1, will be gathered together to provide the key aspect of the specification, which is the link. We can guarantee that we can have the GI registered when we demonstrate there is a link between the product's quality and its origin. So as I mentioned earlier, this link could be multiple. We could have effect of the environment. We can have effect of local factors such as local know-how. And also we can have to the history, a background of these products, a reputation, a certain fame of the name. All this information should be collected if available and be added in the specification to demonstrate this link between the products and its origin. If the link is not demonstrated, the GI may not be registrable, and that's very important. Then when we are applying for the specification, this information will be also added some other information very important for both the registration of the GI and implementation. It's a traceability system. The 3 points I mentioned in brown on my slide: proof of origin, the traceability system. For example, all the information we mentioned before, like the geographical area of production, the method of production, the characteristics, the link, they will have to be proven. They will have to be proven and controlled. So it's important to also consider that when we draft a specification of a product, we have to put information that can only be controlled. Otherwise, they will not be achievable. Example, sometimes the farmer are putting some interesting adjectives when they are describing their products. They will say, for example, my product is the best, or it tastes amazing, or it is the best rice in the world. That may be something they can put in their marketing campaign, but this information are subjective, not objective. So they are not considered when geographical indication are analyzed and granted protection. So besides the traceability and proof of origin, then we have to identify the control system, which will have to be associated to this GI. And when we talk about control system for GI, we talk about different level of control, some which are voluntary, some are compulsory. Voluntary, for example, every producer in a GI can control their own production. That's a good behavior. We can have also the group of producers which create an internal control system amongst members. That's also a good practice, but it's not what we call the control system as such in a GI. The control system we call it's an external control system, third party, to guarantee independence on a control and trust. This control has to be done by third party, either by public body or private certification body. And last but not least, another important section of the specification will be to agree between stakeholders of a minimum level of information which will have to be put on the labeling of the products when they are commercialized. It doesn't mean like everybody producing these products will have to have the same label, but everybody producing these products will have to comply with some minimum requirements in the labeling. For example, put a proper name of the GI in a relevant language on the packaging. In case of country have a specific requirement, for example, a national GI label, as it is the case in Thailand, put the national GI label on the packaging. So it's important because it's allow for having a proper way to communicate to the consumer about the GI. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about why we are witnessing such an increased development of GI in the world. Like we are doubling the number of GI for the last 10 years registered worldwide. Why? Because it corresponds to a food and agriculture trend, for example. You know, as a country, or even as an individual, we go to the level of development to different priority. So for a country or an individual, the first priority is first to find food. So it's food security. When your income or your level of development as a country allow you to pass this level of priority, the next priority will be food safety. You can afford food. Food is made available. So you want to be sure the food is safe to consume. Then when we already achieve also a good level of food safety, what is next? It is food quality. And food quality term is very subjective. It depends really of the different stakeholders and consumer. For example, for one consumer, quality will be a product which has good taste or good flavor, so correspond to the good idea of the standard of these products. For other consumer, quality will mean the way it is produced. For example, is it organic? Is it produced fairly for the producer, like fair trade, for example? But for other consumer, it will be also much more. It will be a whole package, like where the products come from. Is it traceable? Is it trustable? Is it unique in terms of characteristic? So that will correspond to the definition of geographical indication. So geographical indication is fully participating to this need from the consumer to the request for better food quality in general. On the other hand, for the producers, the logic of production have changed. Maybe 30 years, 40 years ago, you were a producer, you were mostly producing for yourself or for your village or for your region or sometimes for your country. You were not even exporting. But now, nearly every producer may eventually have the opportunity not only to produce locally, but also to export, either to internet or to normal channel of distribution. So because everybody can do that, it becomes also a lot more concurrential. The competition is very hard because before your market was closed, you want to sell pomelo in your market, you can do it only if the pomelo coming from the region or the country, because there was limitation on logistic, limitation of taxation, etc. But nowadays, with a wild market, with a lot of free trade agreement, you can basically find pomelo sold in Thailand, perhaps for many countries. So you are even competing on your own market with imported products. So what you need to do is to be able to differentiate your products to other products. The price is not enough anymore. You need to prove your products as a specific test, specific method of production, and you can compete as a producer against other products in your local market and in foreign market. And also, something which even be very important during the pandemic we are facing now, you notice that there is a demand of local consumer from local products, but not any type. A local consumer which can afford good quality products, they want to be sure the products they buy is properly produced, proper methodology, traceability, etc. And you have also an increase of demand of local products by tourists. Whatever they are, foreign tourists, as you can see nowadays with the pandemic, foreign tourism is limited. But during the pandemic, we observe a lot of national tourism, people from the city going back to the province and want to test local food, local handicraft, because they want to rediscover their products. And it was often the only way for local producers sometimes to sell their products because they cannot export it during this pandemic. So we saw the importance of GIs in this perspective to attract not only exporters, but attract local consumer and tourists as well. I give you an example here. When I came to Thailand 20 years ago, if I go to a market or a supermarket and I want to buy pineapple, I had no idea. There were several pineapples, and I have no idea which pineapple to choose because I didn't know what were the characteristics of each pineapple. Nowadays, partially thanks to the GI development in Thailand, if I go to a supermarket, I will find this kind of panel showing me different originally linked pineapple, some of them GIs, some of them not yet GI, but already starting to advertise their origin and their characteristics. So I believe in the future, they may also apply for GI protection. But just in this slide, we have 10 pineapple in Thailand. Who will have known that 20 years ago? And now, as a consumer, I will know which products I want to choose, and I will be attached to one instead of another. So it's good. It demonstrates like you can have different area of production selling very specific products, having specific market. And here in labeling, you see also the improvement. Instead of only selling in a market a raw pineapple that nobody knows where it's come from, the fact like you can advertise the origin of the products, the specific characteristic of the products, and the GI registration. You see here some example of logo of Thailand advertising. It is the GI to the consumer. But also to have a market improvement and also increase of prices. You see the same example here for pomelos that I took the picture in a central shop in Bangkok, or also in Cambodia, you have the same type of geographical indication with their national logo. What is important is GI as a consumer perspective. Yeah.
Mr. Stephane.
Yes.
I will conclude a little bit about your presentation in Thai language. ก็คือในคำบรรยายของคุณสเตฟานเนี่ยนะคะก็ได้พูดถึงในเรื่องของ TRIPS Agreement ใน TRIPS Agreement นี่เองเนี่ยที่ได้มีการพูดถึงในเรื่องarticle ที่ใช้กับในเรื่องของ GI ก็คืออยู่ในมาตราที่22ถึงมาตราที่24ซึ่งมาตราที่22พูดถึงการรักษาที่เป็นการคุ้มครอง GI ทั่วไปแต่ถ้ามาตราที่23เนี่ยก็จะเป็นในเรื่องของการคุ้มครอง GI ที่เป็นลักษณะพิเศษและมาตราที่24จะพูดถึงมาตรฐานการยกเว้นที่มวลสมาชิกทั้งหลายจะต้องให้ดำเนินการคุณสเตฟานได้อธิบายถึงเรื่องในแง่ของอะไรที่เป็น GI จะต้องมีความเชื่อมโยงกับแหล่งภูมิศาสตร์และยังเลยไปถึงว่าจะเป็นเรื่องของ GI ที่เกี่ยวกับเรื่องของ handicraft พวกหัตถกรรมทั้งหลายหรือพวกหินอ่อนนะคะแน่นอนที่สุดการเรื่องของความเชื่อมโยงในเรื่องของสิ่งบ่งชี้ทางภูมิศาสตร์เนี่ยที่สำคัญก็คือจะอยู่ในสไลด์ที่ในเรื่องของ the GI Book of Specification ซึ่งตรงนั้นเองเนี่ยก็จะบอกถึงว่าจะเป็นการ GI จะเป็นการคุ้มครองเรื่องชื่อนะจะเป็นการคุ้มครองเรื่องชื่อนะแล้วก็จะเป็นในเรื่องของมีเรื่องของ specification หรือdescription นี่เองเนี่ยต้องเป็นอย่างไรนะคะแล้วก็พูดถึงในเรื่องของ GI area นี่ด้วยนะคะว่าจะต้องเป็นยังไงงั้นตรงนี้เองเนี่ยพูดถึงการเชื่อมโยงกับแหล่งภูมิศาสตร์สิ่งที่สำคัญในระบบ GI อันหนึ่งก็คือในเรื่องของระบบ control system นะคะซึ่งจะแสดงออกในลักษณะที่เป็นฉลากที่สามารถจะตรวจสอบย้อนกลับได้และแน่นอนที่สุดค่ะประโยชน์ของในตัว GI เนี่ยก็คือในเรื่องของตัวที่จะต้องมีการพัฒนาขึ้นมาว่ามีประโยชน์ยังไงเพราะเนื่องจากเป็นเรื่องของระบบของความปลอดภัยเรื่องของคุณภาพที่ดีมีความเชื่อมโยงกับแหล่งภูมิศาสตร์และแน่นอนที่สุดก็คือจะเป็นส่งเสริมการท่องเที่ยวไปด้วยนะคะเอาละค่ะคุณสเตฟานได้มีการอธิบายถึงตัวสินค้าที่ในตลาดต่างๆนะคะนั่นคือในส่วนที่พูดในเบื้องต้นก็ถ้าถามว่าเมืองไทยมีลักษณะเช่นนี้ไหมก็เราก็เรียนมาจากที่ของฝรั่งเศสนี่แหละค่ะนะคะก็คือเป็นในแนวเดียวกันค่ะ Stephane, you have a floor now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kun Pachima. So, because the GI system will provide information on the products and traceability, it's also give the accountability to the consumer, to all of us. When we buy these products, we have more information, we have more traceability, so we intend to trust these products more. And you know, if you do business, you know that trust is a key. When you want to sell a product, if your buyer trusts you, you can claim a better price. So for the producer, they can increase the price of their products. They can have better product valorization. And that's why a lot of producers are going for GI nowadays in Europe or somewhere else. And it's just the beginning, because you will see on this slide that geographical indication are not cheap products. We have to know that they are high-end products, or at least products which have a certain value, which is good for the producer, and the consumer have to pay a bit of premium with that. But there is no problem on that, because, for example, the key market for GI are often the middle class and the upper middle class. And you can see in Asia, this middle class is booming. In Europe, Japan, or US, the middle class is basically stable. But in Asia, it is expected for this middle class to grow up 6% a year in the coming years, instead of 0.5% in developed countries. So what does it mean? There will be a lot of opportunity for the producer of GI to sell their products to their fellow Asian consumers, like China, India, but Thailand, Indonesia, because the ratio of middle class will move from 29% of the middle class in Asia in 2009 to over 66% of the world middle class expected to be located in Asia by 2030. So it's very important. You as the judges, you will receive more and more eventually cases of GI facing difficulty or counterfeiting in Asian market. No more European GIs or other GI facing issue in Asia. Even Thai GI will have to defend their rights in neighboring market, because they will face problem of enforcement because people will try to copy their name, because the consumer will buy Asian GIs and they will be misled eventually by counterfeiting. So when we talk about the main purpose in GI, in fact, we have three main purposes. That's why I tell you GI is not only an intellectual property right, simple one, which is promoting the interest of the applicant. For example, applicant of patent, it's its own business. Applicant of trademark, it's a company which is own business. For GI, is a bit broader than that. It protects the producers of the GI, but it also protects the consumer of the GI. This one is the same for other IP rights. But also the difference with other IP rights, like a trademark or patent, GI play also a very important role to preserve national and local heritage, terroir, territory, local know-how. By protecting Thai GIs, you're protecting Thai heritage, you're protecting Thai know-how, you're protecting Thai consumers, you're protecting Thai producer. That for sure, because as I will tell you later, a GI registered in Thailand as a Thai GI will always remain Thai owned. It cannot be sold to a foreign company as a GI. It could be eventually sold as a product, but the GI ownership of a Thai GI will always remain in Thailand. So it's very important to keep that in mind when you grant GI protection. And in terms of development, I put on this slide the incredible development of GI in Asia. You know, historically speaking, GI developed first in Europe. But in the next 10 years, we are expecting to have more GI registered in Asia than in Europe. There is a boom right now. There is several thousand GI already registered in Asia. Here, I give you the example also of a website where you can find the GI registered in Japan, made by the Ministry of Agriculture in Japan. You have the link, you will be able to see it there. You have also a lot of information on GI registration in Thailand for Thai GI, made by the Ministry of Commerce of Thailand, which is very efficient in promoting Thai GIs. We have already more than 130 GI registered in Thailand, more than 300 in the whole ASEAN, and 370, for example, already in India, and more than 1,004 in China. You have also capacity to see that Asian GI are also getting protected and registered abroad. And I give you in the future, if you want to check what are the Asian GI which are registered at GI in EU, you have here two websites you can consult anytime, which are listing all geographical indications registered in EU, whether they are European or non-European, from South America, Africa, and Thailand. And you will notice there is already more than 100 GI Asian registered as a GI in the European Union. Also, in the last 10 years, when you talk about the new normal, GI has played an increasing role to give an answer to the producer of handicraft. You know, handicraft producers are struggling to sell their products, especially now with lockdowns, because they cannot find sometimes consumers to visit them and to see the products made. And if they want to sell to internet, who's going to buy handicraft on internet if they are not sure what they're buying is a handicraft? Because it could be a Thai silk made in China. So you don't want to pay a high price for that. So GIs will allow already to give a guarantee to the consumer that what they will buy is a genuine handicraft, which is controlled and traceable. So it's becoming very important for handicraft. And I will give you the example of India. On a 370 GIs registered in India, more than 50% of them are handicraft. And the Indian government is very active in protecting GI products as handicraft, and it even registered Thai GIs, handicraft. So if you go to India, you will see that the Lampoon brocade Thai silk from Thailand is officially protected by the government of India. And you can find here the link, if you are interested, of a video produced by the government of India to promote GIs. Of course, Thailand is also very active on that. Thailand has already very much been proactive in protecting handicraft for GI, silk, pottery, many other products. And you have also the capacity to collect a lot of movies or video to promote Thai handicraft silk. And it's amazingly done. It's very good quality. Here you see some example of pictures of the project we developed in the last 2 years to protect GI in Laos. So last year, 2 GI for handicraft were registered in Laos for silk, one for Wapan silk, the other one from Luang Prabang silk, which is also World Heritage City. So it just shows you that it is a regional dynamic as well. But when we talk about establishing GI system, of course, when we talk to the authorities and stakeholders, the key objective when you register GI is the product recognition, protection, and sustainable valorization. But to achieve this result, we need to have a global perspective of a national system of GI. The first step, it's a legal framework. What type of legal protection we grant to GIs? And I will show you the different possibility in my next slide. Then the second step will be who is entitled to administer the GI as an office. Most of the time, in Asia in particular, it's an IP office which will administer GI, but not alone. Often, the IP office will have the administration of the system, but it will require the cooperation from other technical ministries, Ministry of Agriculture for agricultural products, Ministry of Fishery for fisheries, Ministry in charge of culture handicraft for handicraft, to provide some expertise when they will have to review the application of the GI, or also external expert, scholars, professional, to participate to the examination of GI. And who will be entitled to file for GIs for the management of the GI? We will see there is very strict requirement for an applicant type to apply for GIs. Then the next step will be to deal with the GI control. Who will be able to control the GI, public or private body? And when we achieve this step 1, 2, 3, legal framework, GI administration and management, GI control, then the applicant will be able to file for a GI, have it registered in national level, and after being able to be protected in foreign market. Then you can start to promote and you can start to enforce. Without registration at national level, very difficult to protect the name abroad. You know, working with many countries in Asia, we face always the same question. Is why we have copy of our products in foreign market? Like, for example, Ceylon tea. It's copied everywhere. It's not even coming from Sri Lanka. But we tell them, as long as you don't protect it as a GI in your country, everybody can use it anywhere. You cannot protect the name. Any Thai name that is not protected legally in your country as a GI could be used by producer anywhere. That's very important to keep that in mind. If you want to protect your traditional name, your heritage, you have to protect it nationally first, and GI is a good way. If you don't protect it, it can be stolen by anyone. You can not even be able to protect it later on. So, in terms of legal system, there is 3 main ways to legally protect GI, and country decide which way they want to go through. One way could be to rely on the legislation on unfair competition, which is less and less used, but can be used in some country. In particular, common law country is quite often the case. Then the second system that could protect origin linked products could be the collective or certification mark system. That will be a possibility, but as I will show you today, is not entirely effective sometimes to protect GIs as a definition of international treaty. Then the last possibility, which is currently the one which is getting momentum in the world, is the use of a sui generis system. It means a specific law dedicated to geographical indication, as it is, for example, the case in Thailand or in Europe, for example. So here I try to show you the main difference between, for example, the GI system and a trademark system to protect origin-linked products. So if you look at the GIs, they must certify the origin of the products. That's a very important point. When you register the GI, you're not only protecting the name, you're protecting a lot of data, information, which are guaranteeing some information linked to the origin of the products. For a trademark, if you register a trademark, you may certify the origin of the product, but it's not compulsory. You can use a geographical name, like for example, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you will not guarantee that the chicken you will find in a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant is coming from Kentucky. Actually, it's quite the opposite. You will barely find any chicken made from Kentucky when you buy KFC. So the trademark should not normally mislead the public on the origin of the products, nor can they be descriptive. So the country have implemented provision normally in a legislation to making it impossible to register GI as a trademark, a geographical term, sorry, as a trademark, but it may happen. So also the production have to be rooted in a region for GI. It cannot be delocalized to another area or to another country. But for a trademark, as you register it, you don't limit it to a geographical area. You can eventually delocalize your products. It depends on what you want to do with your trademark. And you can sell your trademark to a foreign company, and then the name don't belong to Thailand anymore because it belongs to the company. They can use this geographical name. But for GI, it's not possible. Also, GI protect good in accordance with national and sometimes regional classification of good. For example, when you register a trademark, you have to identify a very specific class, which is complying with international standard like NIST classification. For GI, every country can create its own classification. You can just say, for example, as a class, this is a food products, this is a vegetable, this is a handicraft, just to describe the type of products. It's not a scientific classification. Also, a big difference between a GI system and trademark. GI system, third-party compulsory control. As I mentioned, it's very key. External public or private body can ensure products compliance with specification. For trademark, there is no compulsory control. There is individual or voluntary control, or sometimes no control at all. When you, once again, if you buy Kentucky Fried Chicken, there is no need for you to know where the products have been made. It is not part of what you're asking for when you're buying the product. So there may not be control at all. And for the ownership of GI has to be collective. You cannot own a GI as a single company or as a single individual, except exception. I will talk about it later. For for trademark, as an individual, you can own a trademark. As a small group, you can own a trademark. Same for certification mark. It is not compulsory collective ownership, just voluntary, for example, if you want to register a collective trademark. And once again, for GI, the ownership of the GI is not transferable. it cannot be licensed. You can only grant the right of use of your name and the GI to producer, but it cannot be licensed to people which has nothing to do with the GI right holders. For a trademark, you can do whatever you want with your trademark. You can sell it, you can license it. So also there is a lot of characteristic in terms of the sui generis system that is a lot more protective of GI, including, for example, it protects direct or indirect commercial use of the registered name. Also, it may protect translation or imitation of the name that trademark may not automatically do. And it's also protect against misleading information about the provenance, the origin, and other characteristic of the good. I will not detail because we don't have enough time, but you have the document here if you want to have a look. Also important for the GI, there is one rule that apply to trademark that may not apply to GI. It's a first come, first serve, like first in time, first in right. When you are a trademark, you can register it if nobody did it before you. So that's the rule normally. But for GIs, it's not systematic because it's not the same type of right. You can imagine that even if a trademark was registered using the geographical name in its mark, you could have granted the authorization to use a GI. And you could eventually also have a coexistence in the market between a trademark and the GI using the same geographical name. But there will be some requirements in terms of accepting this type of coexistence. And there may be also some requirements in terms of disclaimer if this situation arises. Also difference is the duration of protection. So sometimes to register a GI, it takes a lot of time. But the good news is once it is registered, there is no deadline for it to lose protection. Normally, in many legislation, once the GI is granted registration, it is protected as long as the GI and its specification exist. There is no limit of protection. So you do a lot of work first, but once it is registered, this GI may be protected for the next generation. Yeah, you don't need to register it anymore. For trademark, as you know, every trademark registered has to be renewed every 10 years. And if for any reason you forget sometimes even to pay the fees or to renew the trademark, it becomes public domain. So people can steal it or can register it on their own behalf. For some GI, as there is no limitation of duration, it will not happen. It will not be possible. So also the cost of registration, this one I will not go into details, but the cost of registration of GI are much cheaper normally than trademark because there is not the need to register by class. And often there is a help from the government to have minimum fees for their national producer to register their products. So that's what an advantage of GI as well. It's not sometimes as costly for small producer to register their products as a GI as it could be as a trademark. So in practice, as I mentioned, you can use different legal systems, but we have to say that also for people using the trademark system, there is some challenges. Like, for example, in practice, the registration of a word mark with a geographical name may appear very difficult, if not impossible, to secure when you want to register your mark. So many producers have raised concern with the cost of enforcing trademark right as well. But GIs is more secured. And we can say nowadays that GI and trademark are still not equally treated by many countries. And for GI, for origin link protected products. And they also correspond on different needs. So many laws are having the two systems available, like trademark system and GI system. and both can cohabit and also work together. For example, you register the name by the GI, and some producer, some company decide to have a trademark with some logo, some appealing symbol, to also use them to promote the GI products or to promote their brand. That's normally what is the trend nowadays. So if you look at the idea here, you have some example that the name protected is a Parmigiano Reggiano, for example, on these products. But the producer decided together to also create a logo. They are not obliged. It is not what is protected as a GI. It is what is agreed as part of the labeling of the products. So they create this logo with the cheese just to be even more appealing to the consumer. And the logo you see in red, it is the official label of especially protected designation of origin in Europe, which is compulsory. Every European GIs commercialized in the world have to bear this logo on their packaging. If you see a European GI for food which doesn't have this logo, it may be a fake. So here I just list an example of countries which have voted to work on sui generis legal system. And also you see in red the number of GI. I think Thailand is very active, so perhaps the number I put of 132 GI is already outdated. Kunpachima may confirm. But you see in India 370, China 142, 52, Indonesia more than 80, Japan 86, Laos 6. So many of the countries, in particular in ASEAN, are developing GI sui generis system. And we are working currently with other countries in the region to do the same, like Pakistan, Myanmar, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Papua New Guinea, Saudi Arabia, Iran, or Philippines. They're all developing or considering developing a sui generis system. But to make a very efficient system on GIs, the law is very important, of course. But then I listed here what makes a national GI system efficient. First, the collective ownership. As I mentioned, GI cannot be individually owned. It has to be collectively owned. And the best structure to do so will be an inclusive value chain, creation of interprofessional organization of association, or any other legal structure which can represent fully the value chain of the GI products. Then the next step is to write inclusively the specification with this group. I am an expert of GI. I am assisting a lot of countries to draft GI specification for their products. But I always say from the beginning, I am only here to help you to put on a format information that you will provide me with. Because you cannot decide for the producer and trader what GI they want to protect. They need to know what products they want to protect as a GI. You can only help them as a government or as expert to put it in a right format and select the correct information, but you cannot replace them. That's very important. The next factor is, as I mentioned, to have a strong traceability and control procedure. And it's justify cooperation with the public and the private sector again. GI is very important. GI could be registered, but if the GI is not properly controlled, the value of the products to the eyes of the consumer, therefore the value for the producer will be limited because you will not have the trust on the GI. That's why it's very important to have a lot of effort on the traceability and control system. And I know, following what's happened in Thailand, that the government is very, very active on guaranteeing that more and more GI registered are properly controlled to guarantee the best income to the producer and best trust to the consumer. And also, another point for a successful system is inter-agency cooperation. As I mentioned, there is a lot of ministries, there are a lot of agencies which should be involved in GI development in the country, not only at central level, for example, Department of Agriculture with the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Agriculture, already cooperate quite well. Department of Rice, I know in Thailand, but it's also very important, and I think it's a case in Thailand as well, to do it at a provincial level, regional level. If I am correct, a few weeks ago, Thailand has achieved a milestone having at least one GI registered in all the province of Thailand. So it demonstrates that there was a lot of involvement of provincial authority to proactively identify their GI products. And it's very important. And last but not least, GI, it's also a very important medium to promote public-private partnership. Like, for example, in previous program we developed, we work with the Ministry of Commerce to develop partnership with the private sector, in particular Central Group, to promote awareness on GI. And I think Ministry of Commerce has done an amazing job to do that with the organization of IP Fair, GI Fair regularly, very active on social media. That's very important. Like, it's a win-win situation when the public sector and the private sector work on promoting GI, because it promotes national products. 90%, 99% of the benefit of selling these products will go back to Thai stakeholders, as I mentioned. And it will also, as soon as the products start to be well known, it will also allow the province to develop, not only by selling the products itself, but attracting tourism, attracting investment in hospitality, hotel, to use these products and to promote these products to tourists, whether they are national tourists or foreign tourists. So it's a win-win situation. And you see one example of what's happening with GIs. Here in this slide, you can see that most of the country we're working with now have developed national GI label to actually identify to the consumer GI as a very specific category of products, which is available when they buy products. So it's allowed to additionally give incentive to the producer and visibility to the producer of these products by having this national logo demonstrating to the consumer wherever they are in Thailand or in abroad that when they buy these products, they are buying real, original, national products. And it's very important nowadays. You see the example in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, Japan, India. And here you see the example of EU. You have two logos in EU. I don't know if you are aware, but in EU, you have two different categories of GI. I just mentioned it here for your information because it's an exception. Most of the countries in the world only have one category. It's what we call geographical indication. But in Europe, because the system started a long time ago, there was first one category of products which was called appellation of origin, and after during the last 20 years, then the term of geographical indication become more and more used. So instead of regrouping both categories, they still maintain to satisfy the old applicant the two categories, appellation of origin and geographical indication. But technically speaking, they are both geographical indication, as we consider Thailand geographical indication. The only difference, if you look at products coming from Europe between appellation of origin and geographical indication, will be that appellation of origin have a stronger link with the area of origin. When you want to be registered as appellation of origin, you have to have all the production, processing, and preparation done in a specific area. But for the protected geographical indication, there is not a need to have all the steps. One, like for example, production or process may be sufficient. It means if you are doing ham, you may import the pig from outside the region and process the ham locally. It can be a geographical indication. But if you want to have an appellation of origin, you will have to look to use local pig, local seed, local variety. So it has to be all local. One also advantage of GI nowadays is for the protection in foreign country. You have three main ways once you are registered in Thailand, for example, as the GI, to have your GI protected in foreign country and foreign market. And what is interesting is most of this process are very inexpensive if you compare to what you will have to do if you were protected as a trademark to be protected in foreign countries. So for example, the first method to be protected will be to direct application. So as the IGI or Asian GI, you can apply for protection in the European Union or in Asian market directly. And it's already happened. There is many of these cases. And you have the example on the right of Tongku Longhai homely rice, which is also already registered as a GI EU. That's why you can see on the packaging, they have not only the GI national logo, but also the European Union logo. Because when you are registered as a GI directly in the EU, you can use the EU logo worldwide on your packaging. The second way you can have your GI protected, and it's very dynamic nowadays, is through the exchange of lists between countries. So instead of going one by one, protecting the GI, the country decide to exchange a list. It could be just ad hoc exchange, or it could be under the FTA, for example. You exchange a list of GI to be reciprocally protected. And it's, for example, nowadays systematically the case with FTA signed by the EU. If any country sign an FTA with EU, there will be an exchange of list of GI. So local GI will be protected in EU, and some EU GI, not all of them, but some will be protected in automatically in the other country. So recently you have such a FTA and exchange of list between EU and Vietnam, EU and Japan, EU and China, EU and Singapore. For Singapore, there was no exchange of list because Singapore doesn't have GI, but some EU GI were protected. And I think there will be more and more in the future. I understand like the FTA negotiation are relaunched between Thailand and EU, so it may be also the case in the future for Thailand. Then the last way to protect your GI in the foreign market will be to the accession of Thailand in the International Treaty of GI, especially the WIPO Geneva Act of the Lisbon International Agreement on Appellation of Origin on Geographical Indication. Thailand is not member yet, but some other countries are, like for example, last year, EU joined, as well as Laos and Cambodia. So what this system offers is instead of applying in each country independently with a minimum fees, I think it's 1,000 Swiss francs, but I'm not sure. You can apply to the WIPO office and identify your GI to be protected in all the countries which are members. So the country will review the application and they may grant you fast track protection. It's not automatic. It's not because you're a member that your GI will be automatically protected, because some of the country may have different provision in their law that will not allow for your products to be protected. 99% of the time it will be protected. So what I say, it was not expensive, technically speaking, because you see these three methods of protection. Direct application is often very cheap. If you apply in any of the European language in Europe, there is no fees for a Thai GI to be registered in EU. The only thing you will have to consider is to have sometimes the use of a professional to prepare the application, to fill up the form, or to translate the terms. That may be needed. But if the authority want to facilitate this for you as a producer, you don't need it. It will be subsidized by the authorities. For the two other systems, exchange of list, obviously, there is no payment of fees to register that. And for the international treaty, one fee is paid for all, and sometimes it will also be subsidized by the government. So you see now a lot of GIs and logos being available in the market, so it's raised the awareness of the consumers. But what I want to say here is not because there is a geographical name on the packaging that it is a GI. I give you example here of some packaging of products I made a picture from in a Thai supermarket. So here, for example, you have some yogurt, which advertising like it's used as a component apricot from the Woolburn Valley region in Australia. It may be true, it may not. We don't know. That's the point. If the apricot from Goulburn Valley region were registered as a GI, to have them indicated as a component of the products, they will have to demonstrate like 100% of the apricot contained in this yogurt are the GI, and only the GI. So that a total guarantee to the consumer that it is not only a marketing tool, but what they buy is actually a specific local apricot. Same here for some chocolate that I bought in a supermarket here. You see on the left side, you see some geographically linked cacao from Vietnam, from Bentley region. And on the right, some cacao from Samoan state for the chocolate made in New Zealand. So showing this picture, I want to show you two things. First, once again, if it's not a GI, people can say whatever they want on their packaging. You cannot verify if it's true. But this packaging show you also that it is obvious nowadays that the consumer react very positively to identifying the origin of the products, even if it's not yet a GI. So it just shows you that the road of GI in Asia or in Pacific Island like Samoa is starting, because it's a very efficient way to attract the consumer to buy your products and show your products is unique. Hello?
Hello, Stephane.
Yes.
May I explain a little bit about your presentation?
Yes, of course.
เห็นได้ว่าในส่วนที่คุณสเตฟานได้พูดถึงเนี่ยพูดถึงในเรื่องของการพัฒนาของในเรื่องของ GI เนี่ยใน EU ในเอเชียนะคะซึ่งในส่วนนี้ก็ได้เห็นว่า GI เนี่ยมันเป็นสินค้าสำหรับ niche market ก็คือเป็น premium product ที่ราคาจะค่อนข้างสูงนิดนึงและแน่นอนที่สุดการคุ้มครอง GI นี่เองเนี่ยก็จะมีมากกว่าการคุ้มครอง IP ตัวอื่นๆเพราะนอกจากคุ้มครองตัวชื่อ GI แล้วเนี่ยยังคุ้มครองถึงผู้ผลิตผู้บริโภคพูดถึงสิ่งแวดล้อมพูดถึงในการที่จะพัฒนาในเรื่องอากาศอะไรอย่างนี้เข้ามาด้วยนะคะและที่สำคัญอีกอันก็คือว่าได้พูดถึงในเรื่องของตัว GI เองเนี่ยสถิติในการจะจดทะเบียน GI เนี่ยได้มีการเพิ่มขึ้นในเอเชียเนี่ยเห็นว่าโตอย่างเด่นชัดเลยนะคะโดยเฉพาะสินค้าที่ได้เห็นในก็คืออินเดียก็คือในทำในพวกของงานหัตถกรรมหรือแฮนดิคราฟต์ทั้งหลายอันนี้คนไทยต้องภูมิใจเพราะประเทศไทยถ้าจะเป็นผู้นำในเรื่องของการจดทะเบียน GI เรื่องแฮนดิคราฟต์ด้วยซ้ำไปนะคะและยังได้คุณสเตฟานได้ไปแตะอีกในเรื่องของตัวระบบของ GI ที่เป็นที่ยอมรับกันก็คือว่าระบบ GI system เนี่ยจะต้องมีระบบของการ control system ที่เข้ามาเกี่ยวเนื่องและอีกประการหนึ่งก็คือจะได้เห็นได้ว่าในการที่จะจดทะเบียน GI เนี่ยเมื่อเปรียบเทียบกับการจดทะเบียนเครื่องหมายการค้าเครื่องหมายรับรองหรือเครื่องหมายบริการแล้วเนี่ยนะคะบางประเทศอาจจะใช้เป็น generic law เช่นประเทศไทยนะคะหรือในยุโรปเองก็ตามแต่ว่าในประเทศอเมริกาแคนาดาเลยก็จะใช้เครื่องหมายการค้านะคะก็คือจะใช้เป็นเครื่องหมายร่วมหรือเครื่องหมายรับรองมาในการจดทะเบียนจะแบ่งออกเป็น2กลุ่มคุณสเตฟานได้แสดงชี้เห็นถึงข้อแตกต่างระหว่างกฎหมาย2ฉบับนี้ในการคุ้มครอง GI ที่เกิดขึ้นและแน่นอนที่สุดนะคะในยุโรปเองเนี่ยมีการคุ้มครอง GI เราใช้คำว่ามีด้วยกันทั้งหมดเนี่ย2ระบบก็คือจะเป็น PDO ก็เป็น Appellation of Origin อันจะมีความเชื่อมโยงกับแหล่งภูมิศาสตร์มากกว่า1อย่างนะคะอีกอันก็คือเป็น PGI ก็คือเป็นลักษณะ Protected Geographical Indication ตรงนี้เองเนี่ยก็จะมีการคุ้มครองตัว GI นี่เองเนี่ยที่มีความเชื่อมโยง1จุดเท่านั้นเพราะฉะนั้นตัวข้าวหอมมะลิทุ่งกุลาร้องไห้ก็เป็นตัวหนึ่งที่เห็นว่าได้มีการขึ้นทะเบียน GI ในประชาคมยุโรปแล้ว นะคะและแน่นอนที่สุดก็คุณสเตฟานได้มาแตะถึงว่าวันหน้าเนี่ยเขาอาจจะมีการแลกเปลี่ยนการคุ้มครองตัว GI แล้วก็ยังโยงไปหาถึงในเรื่องของประเทศไทยสนใจที่จะเข้า WIPO Geneva Act ไหมหรือ Lisbon Act in Lisbon International Agreement ไหมซึ่งในส่วนตรงนี้เองเนี่ยจะเป็นการคุ้มครอง GI แต่อันนี้ประเทศไทยอยู่ในระหว่างการศึกษาความเป็นไปได้ว่าเราจะเข้าหรือไม่เข้านะคะสเตฟาน you have 50% of your presentation, your slide, and then now the time is near to close. It's possible that we will keep 50% of your slide to be next time in the future anymore. And then, but you have two questions in the floor. You can read questions. Would you please answer the questions, please? The first one is about Sri Lanka chili sauce. The second one is like the agriculture. No, not more than two. I give the floor to Edith. Okay.
Let me know.
Okay.
Let me know. We start with the first one. We start with the first one.
Okay, please. You read already? Not two questions, but more than two questions. Okay, please.
I'm trying to read
Yep.
it. Okay.
The first one is about the
First
Sri
one,
Lanka hot chili sauce.
in the US. The sauce was registered by Vietnamese. Then the products belong to Vietnam. However, we have had Sri Lanka hot sauce in Thailand for a long time. Sri Lanka is known in a tone of Thailand. Okay. Moreover, the flavor of Vietnamese and Thai products are totally different. What's your opinion about this GI? Okay. So, GI system is not protected in US. Meaning, if they want to protect the Sri Lanka hot sauce in US, they can do it, but they have to register as a trademark, not as a GI. So in this case, it's only applied to US because it's not recognized as a GI in US because it's not recognized as a GI from Vietnam. It's just an individual brand which registered its name US in a trademark. So my advice, if what you say is correct, that this sauce is very specific to Thailand, it has a specific taste, perhaps because you use specific ingredients locally made and specific know-how, you should rapidly register as a GI in Thailand. Then the fact it is registered as a trademark in the US will have no effect on your possibility to register it as a GI in Thailand. And more importantly, in your capacity, once it is registered as a GI in Thailand, to have Sri Lanka hot sauce or Sri Lanka sauce, maybe not hot, protected as a GI in all the countries which have a GI system. China, India, Europe, all neighboring countries. So my advice is start to protect it in Thailand as soon as possible, then you can protect it abroad.
Okay, thank you. I think for another question is like the agriculture products of Thailand as known our neighborhood countries in the same tropical zone. The second question.
Okay, I'm reading. So as known, neighboring countries, the same tropical zone as ours, may have the same kind of products. They have been only prevent not being so called differently upon local name. Is it probable to lead to such an opportunity in the region as bilateral trade agreement to do some business together? Furthermore, is there any case like this in the EU? So you mean it will be a GI which is not only national, that could be trans boundaries, right? Like shared between countries, correct? Do I understand correctly?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, it is possible. It is very rare because sometimes it's more like a political issue than an IP issue. Some countries, for example, don't want to register together, but it could be possible. In Europe, you have the case which happened between France and Switzerland for a cheese, Gruyere, I think. So the GI was registered by both countries together, not independently. What's happened sometimes more often, and you have two countries want to register the same GI. It's the case, as you know, in India and Pakistan with the basmati rice. So it's more like a fight than a business agreement. But it will be possible that in a paper, two countries can share the same GI if they agree of what the GI should be. That's totally possible.
Yes, for the next question, may I ask the question for you? Let's say if a product is protected as GI in Thailand and the whole process of products as well as the raw materials are in one geographical environment, can that product apply for appellation of origin protection in the European Union?
I don't know if I understand correctly your question, but it means if a GI
นี่เสียงไม่ออก
is registered in Thailand, can they apply for GI protection in Europe as a Thai GI? Correct?
I think they ask for the Thai GI in the European Union, right?
As I mentioned, if you are registered as a Thai GI in Thailand for any products, then after you can register this GI as a Thai applicant. So it means it's not a European GI, it's a Thai GI recognized in the EU without any problem. But the only exception is for non-agriculture and food products. Why? Because at this time, European Union only recognize GIs for food and agriculture. If you want, for example, to protect handicrafts or a mine product like stone, you cannot protect it in the European Union. You can only protect it in some member states like France, which have recognized recently the handicraft or mine products as a GI, not the EU as such.
The last question.
The last question, as you have stated in your presentation that a clear value of GI protection application is to protect the producers in terms of a monetary impact. Would you kindly share what incremental average percentage price increase to a product in general after it's GI protected from what you have seen, please?
Okay. So it's a good question, and I say there is not one answer fit all. Why? Because generally the price of the products keep increasing after the registration. Meaning, you can already notice some increase of price after registration. But if you monitor the price increase 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years after registration, you can see the price increase much more with the time. Why? Because you give time for the producer to market better their products and to the consumer to identify these products in the market. It's not immediate as soon as you register. But what we can say, if you compare to 20 years ago, where there was very few countries which have a GI system, so the GI was perhaps not known outside Europe, for example. So for customer, you will go to the market, you not look after GI when you were in Thailand or when you were in China or when you were in India. But now, because we have seen a surge of GI system development, registration of GI products in many countries, and also promotion of authority, and Thailand is a good example of GI products, you can see that the market for GI products is growing much faster. And in terms of price, for example, in France, as I mentioned, GI system is more than 50 years old, and it started with wine, for example. If you look at the wine in Europe, the price in average of a GI for wine, comparing for wine without GI, is 2.5 times more. Is more than the double the price you sell as a producer, a GI that is not a GI. For the other type of products, it really depends. Because if you talk about rice, for example, rice is considered as a staple product. It means it's a basic product. So you cannot expect a basic product's price go double. And it's maybe dangerous. Imagine if tomorrow the price of rice, everybody buy in Thailand double. You will have problem in the economy. But you can easily find a 10%, 15% increase, 20%, depending what type of rice. But for other products which are more like cash crop, like fruit, some vegetable, some spices like pepper, some handicraft, in average, we have noticed in Asia, within a 5-year time, the price of the products increased by 20%, so sometimes 300% for cash crops within 5 at farm gate. We don't talk about consumer price. We talk about the price paid to the farmer. That's why you see an increased number of farmers wanted to do GI. Because one point we have to be clear of, you cannot oblige a farmer to do the GI. For example, if a producer of Tonkula, Longhai, Homali rice doesn't want to apply for the GI, they are free to not to do that. They will just sell jasmine rice, not Tonkula, Longhai, Homali. But if they still want to use the GI, it's because they make money with it. So that's a voluntary thing. We don't oblige producer to produce the GI. So the one continue to produce it is they make more money doing it than not doing it. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Stephane, for your fruitful presentation today. But the time is end now. I'm so sorry. We cannot we cannot talk with you about the GI now. But in the future, I hope we will have invite you to be the presentation again.
Yes, as you mentioned, I have 50% of the presentation. I keep it for the next time. I will present.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. On behalf of the Central Intellectual Property and International Trade Court, I would like to extend our thankfulness to Mr. Stephane Passeri and Than Pachima Thanasanti for taking your time with us this afternoon. And we hope to have the opportunity to invite you to share your knowledge with us again in the near future. Please take care of yourself, be safe and be healthy, and we hope to see you again later. Thank you very much. สวัสดีค่ะ ค่ะสำหรับการบรรยายในวันนี้นะคะก็จบลงแล้วนะคะสำหรับการบรรยายในครั้งที่7ในครั้งต่อไปนะคะขอเน้นย้ำอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะคะว่าจะเกิดขึ้นในวันอาทิตย์ที่22สิงหาคม2564นะคะโดยการบรรยายในครั้งหน้านะคะจะเป็นการบรรยายเกี่ยวกับหัวข้อการแปลงทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาเป็นเหรียญดิจิทัลและการนำบล็อกเชนมาใช้ในการคุ้มครองสิทธิ์ในทรัพย์สินทางปัญญานะคะขอให้ทุกท่านขอความกรุณาทุกท่านตอบแบบประเมินด้วยนะคะหลังจากเสร็จสิ้นการบรรยายในครั้งนี้แล้วก็อย่าลืมนะคะในวันจันทร์ที่16สิงหาคมเวลา 13:00 นถึง 16:00 นเรายังมีนัดกันนะคะในการบรรยายพิเศษในหัวข้อการดำเนินกระบวนพิจารณาคดีในศาลทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาและการค้าระหว่างประเทศกลางนะคะโดยท่านกิตติมาเสียงฉ่ำและท่านอารยาธีรการุณวงศ์ลิ้มวงทองนะคะท่านผู้พิพากษาศาลทรัพย์สินทางปัญญาและการค้าระหว่างประเทศกลางค่ะในโอกาสนี้นะคะหลังจากเสร็จสิ้นการบรรยายก็ขอให้ทุกท่านรักษาสุขภาพแล้วพบกันใหม่ในวันจันทร์นะคะขอบคุณค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ